So here we have a 1968 Dodge Charger, one of about 97,000 made that year. This car is pretty rare though, and most people that go after the Chargers and looking for the rare ones, they're looking for the Hemi Chargers. That was considered the top of the heap at that time. But this car is actually more rare than a Hemi Charger, and that's because it doesn't have a big motor. It's got the 225 Slant 6. Now this was the 145 horsepower engine of the day. Only about 906 or so reported Chargers that year out of 97,000 came with the Slant 6. So pretty small numbers, down around less than 1% of the Chargers came with this particular engine. Now, why would anybody want to put a small little 145 horsepower motor in a car that is known for being a muscle car? Well, the answer is back then they weren't all muscle cars. Yeah, you could get the 318 or the 383 or the 440 or the 426 Hemi, and you had lots of engine options. So these cars were really designed to do many things. This particular car, set up with a 904 automatic, was obviously ordered as a car that somebody just wanted to drive around town. This is really what you'd call a grocery getter. This was somebody's daily car, everyday car, and these cars, were abused if they had the bigger motors in them. Well, this motor didn't have a lot of oomph. It didn't have a lot of go, so there wasn't a whole lot of drag racing or street racing showing off with this car. It just didn't have anything under the hood to support that. But it got you around town, and you still had the Charger style, which what it was known for. Now, I've had this car for about 15, 16 years now. I bought it out of a classified ad I saw in a Tulsa newspaper, and I jumped on it because it was a Slant 6. At the time, I knew they were pretty rare because I'd built a few Chargers, but I hadn't got into how rare they really were. This particular car had a rough life, and it had been parked. Now the story goes, it was parked sometime around 1977, and there's little paperwork that went with this car, but there is a Oklahoma registration or inspection sticker on here labeled 1977. We know that's not a 2 on the end, 197. That's not a 2 because it would have curved down, so that's a 1977. So that's the last time this car was inspected, and the state of Oklahoma deemed it to be roadworthy. Sometime after that, though, it was in a bit of a wreck. And the story I was told when I bought it was that it had been hit in the back, whether it was a snowy or a rainy day, I can't remember, but somebody tagged it in the back pretty good. And that resulted in the guy sliding around. Looks like he kind of slid up against a guardrail or embankment or something on that side. But the death hit on this one was that when that hit happened, it also ran it into something down low. And you can see how that front tire is leaning in pretty significantly. The lower control arm mount in the K member or the cross member has been ripped, which can be repaired. It's a bit of work. You've got to pull the entire front end apart and get the K member out of there to realign everything. But that pretty much ended this car's life on the road. It does not roll straight. It does roll, but it's on skates now, so we can move it around. So like I said, I picked this up about 15 years ago and stored it away with, again, every intention of someday building this back and getting it back on the road. And now that I'm retired, that time has come, and I've been gathering parts for it, so I've got all the sheet metal, and it's going to need quite a bit. But this car is complete, minus just a few engine parts, and I don't know why somebody robbed some stuff off the engine, but you can see the radiator's missing, hoses, belts are missing. I do have the air cleaner and some other small miscellaneous parts, but everything is here. Fender tag's still here. This was a power steering, manual brake, no air conditioning car. So this was pretty stripped down, except for it does have an automatic. You could also get the 3 on the tree with the Slant 6. But this one does have a column shifted automatic. The interior, well, it's kind of Flintstoning it here. It obviously sat for a long time outside after it was wrecked, and got water and the typical floor rust. We've got an entire new one-piece floor pan for it, but the dash is complete and intact and in amazing condition. See, just barely a couple little dash pad cracks. Other than that, it's in great shape. Speedometer showing 15,311 miles. Probably gonna assume that was 115, but there was really no way to tell. This sat outside for so long, it could look like this and look like it's got 115,000 on it. But I don't know. So the interior's got to have, all new floors, obviously. All the rest of the interior is there. I've taken a few pieces off here and there over the years. Headliner sagging, of course. All the glass is intact. None of the glass is broken. Well, amazing considering the hits that it took. Same with the trunk. Got some aeration going on there. A little ventilation in the trunk, but nothing that a new trunk pan can't fix. And obviously it's going to need some quarter panel repair. Got some good rust going on down here. Big old dent up in this quarter. The entire tail panel is going to have to be replaced. It's pretty crunched. There's no saving that one, or I don't want to spend the time. And I don't know, somebody tried to fight their way into the trunk at one point, and yeah, so we're just going to have to cut that out and replace it. But all the doors open and close good, and obviously this quarter too, we're going to replace that. So it's going to get both new quarters, new floors, new trunk pan. I've done that about 30 times or so on these Chargers, so that's just a few hours of work and a couple of days. Both front fenders kind of been rolled in on the bottom. Not sure what happened there. Front bumper is taken off. I do have the balance for it, but both front fenders, those are savable. I can work those. The grill is actually in really good shape. Just a few small breaks that can be repaired, but everything is there. This even has, at least on this one side, the really rare headlight surround bezels. Usually those are missing, and it's just bare headlights. But those little plastic pieces, you have to take those off to change the headlights, and I guess most of the time, people just didn't put those back on. But this car still has those. Most of the rest of the plastic is deteriorated, but I don't think that's going to hold much water anymore for the windshield wipers. But here, great fact though, this motor still runs. It hasn't run in a few years, but it does start up. That's going to be my first order of business. Going to rebuild the carburetor. Been searching for a radiator for it. Since so few of these were made, it takes a small 22-inch radiator with the in and outs on one side. As you can see, both the radiator hoses are on the right side of the engine. It's kind of a rare little radiator, but I think I've got one found that I can rebuild. Then the rest of it's just going to go ahead and replace the water pump. It's frozen up. It doesn't move. That's pretty solid. Power steering pump's still holding fluid, no leaking, so that's probably good. Alternator, just go ahead and replace that. Replace all the hoses, all the soft parts, and get it back running again. Drive shaft was inside the car. It's laying here on the floor. Rear end seems okay, but we'll pull that apart, obviously, and we're going to go through everything on this car. It'll be stripped down 100%, put up on the rotisserie, all the sheet metal done. All the front end suspension, everything's going to be redone on this car. But first I want to get it running and see if, we'll stick that drive shaft back in it, get a new U-joints for it, stick her back in there, and see if this thing will move on its own. It should. It's just been sitting a long time, but I do know the motor does run. I did get it running after I had purchased it 15 or so years ago, and I've started it a couple of times since then, just kind of hot wired, spray a little gas down in there and fire it up for a few seconds. So I know we're good. Those little Slant 6s are pretty hard to beat. They will run a long time. Not a lot of power, a little bit of grunt, but they're a pretty solid little car. So again, this is a 1968 Dodge Charger, and we are going back all green. I do have all the interior. Actually, about 10 years ago, I had my interior shop redo all the seats. So I got new covers from Legendary, and so it's got all brand new seats. I've got the carpet, I got the headliner, I've got all the interior. I've had that for a long time. So that part's done. That's also the last thing that goes back on the car, but it's done. Got a lot of work to do other than that, but mechanically this car should be in pretty good shape. We'll go through it all, all the brake lines and all that stuff as well. Because I'd like to get this back on the road and drive it, and it'll be repainted. We'll go back original. It was green interior, green. It was a green on green car, so little Kermit the Frog going on here. Not my favorite color, but it's unusual. Even got all the original hubcaps. So this was a hubcap car. I've got all of those that came with it. So we're gonna put it back just like it was, as close as we can from the factory. We're not going for, grease pencil chalk mark restoration, nothing like that, but we're gonna make it, not put any aftermarket parts that we don't have to put on it. And, there'll be, new parts, but not, we're not gonna upgrade to fuel injection or power brakes or any of that sort of stuff. We're gonna leave everything pretty much the way it came, because this is not a high performance car. This is a good driver car, and that's the plan. Just to get it back on the road and start driving it again and have some fun. Go out to some car shows and wow everybody when we open the hood and they're expecting something really cool, and they're gonna see something extremely cool. Most people will be like, what's that? That's a weird looking motor. And they do have, 4-barrel conversions and headers and stuff for these cars. I'm not gonna do any of that. We're just gonna leave it like it is because it's all there. And it all, pretty much works. So Slant 6, 68 Charger. Probably never seen one before. There's very few of them still running around out there. Search the old internet and you might find 4 or 5 stories of these things. Most of them got pulled out and dropped a big block into them. People wanted to go play, and this was a cheap way to find a Slant 6 car and put a big block in it. But not this one. We're keeping their original. So there you go. 1968 Dodge Charger, Slant 6. More rare than a Hemi Charger.